All right, Ole Miss and Florida. Ole Miss 10-point road favorites, 55.5 being the total in this game. Florida, credit to them. They get the job done, and they put the final nail in the coffin of LSU and their playoff hopes with a 27-16 win over the Tigers last week. I mean, Billy Napier's team, incredibly, 4-3 straight up, 6-1 against the spread for Florida in their last 7 games. Turned into a bit of a nice little point spread darling here down the stretch after a dismal start to the year. Ole Miss is off a bye, so extra time to prepare following the big win against Georgia. So you thought maybe after the Georgia win, a letdown or a hangover, but they have the bye week, which should help them to maintain their focus. And they have this game and then Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl next week to wrap up the season. Obviously, against Georgia, that was dominance from the defense. They blew up the line of scrimmage. They made Carson Beck look terrible in that game. They could not run the football, Georgia. And then Jackson Dart and the offense did enough. He was a little bit banged up in that game, but he battled through it against a solid Georgia defense. And they did enough offensively to get that 28-10 win. You know, you look at series history, Ole Miss and Florida, they haven't played since 2020. Florida, the Texas game got away from them, and that was a blowout. But that's the only evidence of a blowout. I mean, the Georgia game, they hung in there. And keep in mind, the Georgia game, there was no DJ Lagway, who DJ Lagway got hurt early in that game, I should say. Aiden Warner had to take over. It was Aiden Warner against Texas, and that was the game that totally got away from them. When DJ Lagway has been there, his mobility, and that matters because Ole Miss has got a tremendous defensive front. And so Lagway being back and being the quarterback for Florida gives him the mobility to survive in the pocket against that Ole Miss defensive front, which should help in this one. Meanwhile, it looks like Trey Harris, the great receiver for Ole Miss, is going to play. He's been waiting and waiting for him to finally come back, but looking like he's finally good to go coming off the bye week and finally returning. He hasn't played since week 7 against LSU, so that's another big weapon here for Ole Miss. I think Florida can, with the mobility of Lagway, can move the ball a bit, can help negate some of that pass rush that Ole Miss can throw at you. And meanwhile, I think with Harris back, I think they can move the ball in this Florida defense, which, still against the better offenses, we have seen, Florida struggle. They gave up the 49 points to Texas. Even Georgia scored 34 against them, even though it wasn't a great offensive game that day for Georgia. I think Ole Miss can get some points. So I like the over. I'm not ready to lay 10 even off the bye, though, with Ole Miss. Florida's a scrappy, feisty team. They've got at least a quarterback now in Lagway that gives them a puncher's chance to compete. So I lean Florida, actually. I don't love the idea of going against Ole Miss off a bye, but I do lean Florida. They've been a point spread darling. They've been undervalued for a while. And the only games where it got away from them was when Warner was the quarterback. Now with Lagway back, you see they've got a functional offense. What do you think here, C-Mac, Ole Miss, Florida?
Yeah, Florida. They play Florida State next after this. That should get them at least into a bowl game. And another team cashed our over win total already with Florida. Was an easy winner. I'm the other way on the total here. I like the under. Now Harris is back, like you talked about, and Ole Miss off the bye. But I love this defense for Ole Miss. I think it's going to be tough for Florida.
Ole Miss. I'm going against a strong under team with this. Yes, with Ole Miss.
Yeah. I thought this total was too high here. There's always the chance of the shootout and maybe turnovers, but their defense has been so good, and I think that's a huge plus for them. What can Lagway do? One thing he's come back from, like last week, the mobility's there in the pocket, but he didn't take off and run, which that was been the Achilles heel for this LSU defense. The 2 weeks before, all the quarterback to do is just run it all the way there. Yeah, so I think he's pretty good, the health, but maybe not great. But they did enough in this game. They're fumbling the ball, LSU did, and Florida, and they're solid at home here. So, yeah, I just like the under in this game. I think Ole Miss defense comes to play. And, Florida's defense it's been spotty. It's looked good at times. It's looked horrible. But I think they come to play. I mean, how can you not with Ole Miss off the bye coming to town? Jackson Dart, all this face paint, Trey Harris, all this. So, yeah, under here.
All right, under for CMAC with Ole Miss and Florida. It's a very interesting game. You're right. Lagway did not run it at all, really, last week against LSU. He's capable of it, but maybe there's something about the injuries coming off that's making him reluctant. Well, hopefully he's in a better because they're going to need something, I think, from him as far as getting outside the pocket against that great Ole Miss defense if Florida's going to be able to hang in that game.